Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow. And in today's episode, I'm going to get into a question that someone asked, like, how did you get interested in Japanese animation? There's a lot of factors that attribute to me getting, into Japanese animation, and I'll probably do that in a couple episodes. But one of the key things happens to be Vancouver. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about the history of Vancouver and the events that transpired when I arrived in Vancouver that sort of helped accumulate and put my interest in that right direction and towards let's say, for example, Japanese animation as opposed to maybe like comic books and Marvel and DC and that kind of stuff, and going that route instead. Okay, so let me just sort of go over that way, and then then we'll be a little bit clearer once I get some of these some of the history and stuff taken care of. Okay, so. I'm going to start back, with a little bit of history. Okay, there basically, a lot of my influence of Japanese animation and that kind of stuff when I first got to Vancouver came from what we refer to as the FOBs, and right now in this politically correct world, the term FOBs, okay, which is short for fresh off the boat, is a really quite derogatory term. Okay, now. The history behind this word, to me, is basically right after the Vietnam War back in 1975. Basically, a lot of the refugees from Vietnam were trying to escape and flee the war and the effects of it. Basically, that the war has done onto their villages and whatnot. So not only did they try to flee to neighboring countries and whatnot, what they did is that they basically got onto boats. And they basically tried to jam all these refugees onto boats, and then basically just set sail and hopefully hit somewhere in Indonesia, Philippines, and that kind of stuff, Australia. Unfortunately, some of these people tried to do it the long haul version, and some of them made them all the way over to Canada. Okay. And that's how a lot of us knew them as the boat people, or the more derogatory term, the FOBs. Okay, the fresh off the boats. Now, I encountered these people back in 1991 or 1981, sorry, I should say, when I was attending a Lakewood Junior Secondary in grade 8. Okay, these these families got reallocated in Prince George. Okay. And their kids and that kind of stuff were put into our high school, into a special class where they were like, basically it's like a high school, but it's also ESL and all that kind of stuff, and put together, right? So, these people were fairly nice, nice kids. I mean, a lot of them were very, very athletic. Very good at soccer. Of course, they didn't really socialize with us too much. They were in their sort of own little group because they didn't really speak English very well. So I mean, they were all sort of bunched together. But that's how we sort of knew them as as these FOBs and that kind of stuff. Now, as prolific as they may seem now, with basically one of their many restaurants and that kind of stuff. Of course, we all know of one of their favorite dishes like pho, or pho, as many people properly pronounce it. But you see, again, the Chinese have had a much longer head start in Canada. So we are sort of more accustomed to that sort of cuisine and culture right away, and then they're basically able to infuse themselves into our culture much easier. Okay. Now, why I mention that is because the next culinary event is in 1986. I went down to Vancouver because I now graduated out of high school, and now I'm going to the University of British Columbia, and in 1986 was the year of Expo 86, the World Exposition in Vancouver. And so this is where I not only moved to Vancouver, started exploring Vancouver and getting all the cultures, meeting different people, obviously getting all the the new students from UBC, which are big melting pot of people from everywhere. Okay, but this also, in basically flooded me with this new version of the FOB. Okay. Now this version of the FOB, is this new generation, or this upcoming sensing generation of Hong Kong Chinese immigrants. Okay, now the precursor to this is in 1997. Okay, that is the July 1st is going to be the scheduled handover of the colony basically the British colony of Hong Kong back to China. So after 99 years of occupation, the British are now going to give back Hong Kong back to China. Okay, so if you were, like, for example, a wealthy doctor or a businessman or a politician in Hong Kong, and you knew that this, you've got this date circled in your calendar, you know that this transitional date's going to happen, you are right now probably freaking out, going, well, what's going to happen? Are they, is the communist government going to take all my money? Are they going to freeze all my assets? Are they going to take over my business? So, what's going to happen? All, taxation is going to be all different. Like, no one knows, and no one in the government's going to tell you, yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, right. Don't worry about nothing, right? So a lot of these people, while they still have their British passports and that kind of stuff, they are finding ways to, basically secure their escape route out of China, just in case, something happens, and they can still get out of Hong Kong, and basically escape with not only themselves, their family, money, that kind of stuff. It has all been, shall we say, evacuated. They've got an evacuation or an emergency exit plan set up. Okay, so one of the ideas, of course, being Canada being a British colony, they would have, they would be, quite easily be able to get into Canada. Okay, and of course, why not go to Vancouver, where we have a Chinatown that already speaks Cantonese at this time, and predominantly there's this place called Richmond, which is basically, you think, okay, any place that's named after money must be a good place. So again, a lot of these immigrants and that kind of stuff from Hong Kong want to come into Canada because this would be a nice escape way. So what basically happens is that before this time happens, the businessman / doctor or whatever would continue working in Hong Kong and whatnot. Yet they would buy houses in basically the western part of North America, so that includes like San Francisco and Los Angeles and San Jose and that kind of stuff. Seattle is another really popular house, but again, because of the sort of the familiarity of the Chinatowns and that kind of stuff, that we have here, and the fact that you want your parents and all that kind of stuff be able to be comfortable being able to shop in their language of Cantonese and that kind of stuff, they would likely pick someplace like Vancouver, Richmond, or whatnot, right? So what they'd do is they'd send their kids overseas as international students or whatnot, and they'd send them over here to go to university, to go to high school and whatnot, and basically, they have a house already here. Maybe they'll get nannies or their other relatives to take care of them and whatnot while they're all here. And again, if something happens in 1997 when the handover goes through and goes bad, they will have a house to escape to. They can get out, right? And then so a lot of their assets are already sort of over here in the form of a house and form of other things that they've already set up over here, just as a backup plan. Okay, now I'll go back a full circle. I've met at Expo 6 and when going through university and that kind of stuff, I met a lot of these people, which, again, a lot of the, people refer to them as the FOBs, because, again, they come right out of Hong Kong. Their English is not their first language. Cantonese or Chinese would be, their first language. And, as I said, the majority of them will speak full Cantonese rather than Mandarin, right? And so basically, these kids are very well off because their parents obviously have money, and so when they get over here, they already have their house. They don't have to work to make rent, as it were, and their meals are already done. A lot of times they're already given vehicles, and they usually get given nice vehicles. Obviously, they're not going to pick up your trashy stuff. No, they'll get brand new Lexuses and high-end vehicles, BMWs and all that kind of stuff. They'll just go with that. And again, this is also in the era of the boom cars and the racers and that kind of stuff. So they obviously have really nice things like Honda Civics or whatever, that kind of stuff, racing type things. Where they'll deck out the stereo, big huge boom box in the back, and everything else like that. So again, a lot of us, normal kids that weren't as well do off and whatnot, were always jealous of them and always wanted to befriend them because they were always referred to as, again, the FOBs. Now, the advantage of having knowing these type of people is also part of the reason why I got into Japanese animation. And these people are in a really unique spot, okay? Because, unlike the Vietnamese people that came in, which really, their culture was really centered around Vietnam and whatnot, and, didn't have any outside influences. Being in Hong Kong, it was like a melting pot of many different things. Okay, so it not only has a lot of influences of the Chinese culture, but because it is a British colony and the way they run business and stuff and government in Hong Kong at the time, it has a lot of English influences. Okay, so as opposed to in a couple of my previous videos, people, and even at work, for example, on my playlist that I have on my workstation at work, I have a lot of Italiano disco artists in my playlist. People like Modern Talking, Fancy, Ken Laszlo, Radiorama, Dan Harrell, Eddie Huntington. Okay, people like this. And bands like this at this time has always been associated with FOB music, because again, while we're listening to 80s music and whatnot, and the music video generation, the MTV, Michael Jackson, Hall & Oates, and all that stuff, that's what we're listening to. But these guys are listening to again, these all these various different artists that are famous as an Italiano disco, and of course they're famous in Hong Kong, right? Because again, you've also covered in the previous episode, a lot of Hong Kong artists are also making covers of these songs in Cantonese. Again, things like some Modern Talking classics, as well as Fancy, for example, is another one. They're all different songs that are all redone in Cantonese cover. Okay, so now these people are basically bringing their culture with them. Or their favorites and that kind of stuff with them, okay, and so that's why they got the Chinese influence and the British influence, so i.e. European music as well, okay, but they also taken from their own music and that kind of stuff a lot of Korean and Japanese influence. So that's where all the the things like the Korean dramas and the music videos. And also the from Japan, all the movie and the cinema, the anime, and all that sound and that kind of soundtracks and that kind of stuff, they're also being brought in. So they also were the first people that I was able to find things like Laserdiscs and anime in Cantonese. Okay, things like the Macross, Mospeada, Orgus, and things like this were I found all available in Cantonese. Okay, and then when we and of course that entire famous format called the VCD, video compact disc, all came out of Hong Kong. And again, a lot of anime came out in that form. I remember like things like Shirato, when I first got that, was in that. Metal Jack was also in that format. So basically, by knowing these people and getting associated with these type of people, they've now shown me a lot of not only the music that they listen to, which I really got into. Again, I was in the music video collecting and that whatnot at this time, the 80s being very, very popular. But now all of a sudden I'm getting all this other music, European music, through the FOBs basically. And as well, when they are also already familiar with some of this anime stuff that's already out there, because again, we're getting Robotech put on TV, but these people already knew about Robotech, and that's how I got introduced into other shows like Megazone 23, and shows like Vampire Hunter D, Fandora, The Dirty Pair, and things like this all started coming in and phasing in, through the FOBs basically, and then that's how my scope grew in and my interest grew towards this field of Japanese animation, this whole new sort of you know this this huge genre that's been unexplored from Japan. Okay, because otherwise, I would have came here to Vancouver and I would have went to like the comic store and again, when I grew up, I watched a lot of superhero shows. Not just Justice League, Spider-Man, and Iceman and things like that. But I mean also all the filmation type classics. So Thunder Art of Barbarian, basically the Lone Ranger, Black Star. And of course all the other filmation things like Jason of Starkman, Space Academy, Lost Ark. Okay, so I was really heavy into sci-fi and space. Sort of should I say the superhero or hero type genre. So I mean, very easily I could have basically went into a comic book store and got really interested in Marvel comics, the X-Men. DC comics and that kind of whole genre there, as well as Conan the Barbarian and all those type of things. I could have easily got into that field and basically became a comic book type collector. But no, because I've met these people at university and through different links, as I gone on to my schooling at UBC. I met other people. Namely people like David Ng and Asa Lewis and that kind of stuff. They helped me basically learn more about all this different kind of anime that was out there. Dave Ng helped me with a lot with the series of Gundam, both Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, and that kind of stuff, and how all that progressed. They helped unravel how Robotech worked and how it was only 3 different series and how the original series would work. Because he got me introduced in a lot of the artwork and that kind of stuff for that. My friend Asa Lewis at the time, he had a friend in Japan who, again, through mutual love for the game of hockey, were basically exchanging videotapes of hockey for anime. So we were sending him copies of games, okay, and then he was sending us recordings of whatever was on TV back to us, and that's how we got a lot of our Dragon Ball and City Hunter and different shows, even Orange Road at that time were some of the shows that we were getting sent back from Japan, just recorded straight off of TV, and just because of the exchanges and that, and then basically from that, I learned where to get more anime, where to rent tapes, where to get books, and then the cycle continues from there. Okay, so so in a kind of a shortened summary, part of the thing that got me into anime is just being in Vancouver at the right time. And again, Vancouver at this time, and we're referring to just right after Expo 86, okay, was basically a city that was basically always taking in lots of different people of different cultures. And at this time, the culture coming in from Hong Kong was very big. So a large contingency of Cantonese speaking Chinese people from Hong Kong were coming in, with a little bit of background usually from English because of the British influence, but again, their integration into our culture helped bring over that first little trickling of anime from Japan, as well as I said, European music and that kind of stuff. Brought that into as club music or dance music. They brought that with them as well. Okay, so again, that's why their impact as a boat people, FOB if you will, was highly significant in the planting of anime and that stuff in North America. Okay, and now so as I said, there's still a little bit more to this story. okay, about how I got into anime and that kind of stuff. But at least that this is part of it. So this is the should I say by location. Okay, some people always have that that thought that sometimes you got to be at the right place at the right time. Well, this is the place. Okay, so Vancouver was definitely the place to be in at this time. Okay, so if you found this episode quite interesting and a little bit of different perspective on history affects Vancouver and that kind of stuff, and of course how anime gets affected in this respect, yeah, definitely you want to go down below here, hit like, hit subscribe, and then when I get more episodes, then you'll be notified when they come out, and then you can tune in. Okay, so until next time, see you again.